Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Jerron Harrington, back to hit you with another video. And today, we are going to be continuing Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm, based on the Heroes of the Morphin Grid series, Part 3. But first, as always, if you're a fan of today's video and everything else that we have to offer here, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Also, to celebrate hitting the milestone of 2K subscribers, I'm going to be doing a special Q&A video. So, if you have any questions, please leave them down in the comment section below, and I will comb through and try to add as many of them as I can to the video. You're free to ask as many questions as you like, and I will try to include as many of them as I can, so feel free to send them down. Or if you just want to send a comment for the video, that's fine also, and I will also include it. But as we get into today's series, we continue our journey with the Ninja Storm Rangers as they set out into the ninja world. Kurosuchi searches for any of the Jinchuriki she can find in her homeland, as the Rangers move to keep to their vow to protect the Jinchuriki from the Akatsuki at all costs. But what will the Akatsuki have up their sleeves, now that they've added Orochimaru back into their midst? And what will the fate of Sasuke Uchiha be, as his fated arrival to his meeting with his brother Itachi is soon to take place? For all this and more, stay tuned as we continue the series, Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm, Part 3. As always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. In the land of Earth, Kurosuchi, the Crimson Thunder Ranger, was searching for either the 4 or the 5 tails. While she had combed through most of the outskirts of the hidden stone village, finding their Jinchuriki was rather difficult. Inoki was someone that didn't seem to particularly care about them. Of course, they weren't traitors, but in the end, their whereabouts were mainly unto themselves. Thus finding them would prove to be much more difficult than she was expecting. For Kurosuchi, her reason for wanting to find the Jinchuriki and wanting to help them actually came from how she had come to know Naruto. During their 2.5 years of training together, she had seen a different side of him, a different side of Jinchuriki in general. Of course, the stigma against those who carried the tailed beast was not only for the Hidden Leaf Village, but it was a stigma that was all across the world. All the same, from her point of view, Jinchuriki weren't as bad as they were made out to be. In fact, out of all of whom she had heard of, the one that she had met was the most positive and kind-hearted of any of them. As such, she wanted to do her part to not only protect Naruto, but to protect those like him. And thus was why she gave such great pursuit in finding them. Although before long, she would eventually find the Jinchuriki she was looking for. Although he would be in the midst of battle, as she made her way closer, she would see that the one known as Roshi, the one who contained the 4 tails, was in battle with 2 members of the Akatsuki. One's known as Kisame Hoshigaki and Itachi Uchiha. She would morph into the Crimson Thunder Ranger as she appeared beside him out of nowhere, using her sword to block against Kisame's Samehada. Roshi would ask just who she was and where she had come from. Kurosuchi would explain that she would tell him later, but for now they needed to focus on winning this fight and getting out of here alive. With the battles now even, Kurosuchi would focus her attentions on Kisame. Kisame, who used his blade Samehada, a sword capable of absorbing chakra. It would quickly be apparent to her that her best bet was to use her taijutsu and her kinjutsu. Thankfully, she was well versed in using the sword, as she used it to her advantage battling against Kisame and his monstrous strength. Her ranger strength proving to be rather formidable, being able to tank many of his strikes and dish out punishment of her own. All the while, Roshi would focus his attentions on keeping Itachi at bay. Itachi attempted to use Amaterasu, however Roshi would use his lava release in order to keep himself safe and keep away from the black flames that were also deadly. Before long though, Itachi could feel that his Mangekyo was starting to take a little bit too much out of him. As such, Kisame would start to take over the bulk of the fight, while Itachi tried to recover. Although in actuality, this bought Itachi time. Itachi was not on the side of the Akatsuki, but he had to play the part. As such, playing up the drama of him being in too weak of a condition to fight, Kisame, who was more than inclined to believe him, would instead take over. Itachi believed that in doing so, he would be giving them a fighting chance. As Kisame would attempt to use the water shark bomb jutsu, both Kurosuchi as well as Roshi would create earth walls to block it, before he would create a large body of water, a water prison that would surround them, large enough for him to merge with Samehada into his monstrous shark-like form, proving to live up to his moniker as the tailless tailed beast. Thankfully, within the great body of water, Kurosuchi, with her helmet, would be able to breathe just fine. However, she knew that Roshi wouldn't last too long. Thankfully, she would use the summoning jutsu and summon her Zord, the Crimson Beetle Zord, as the two made their way inside. Kisame had never seen anything of this monstrosity, a large metal-like contraption. Even inside of the water, it would sink before eventually crawling out. As Kurosuchi was in the control cockpit of the Zord, she would use it and angle its blasters towards Kisame as well as Itachi, the two of them moving out of the way at the last moment. Kisame would curse at the situation, not expecting them to be stopped by another shinobi, and even more so, for them to have this type of power. Although, if it was anything like what Deidara had described to them from his fight in the Hidden Sand, then this was something they simply couldn't contend with right now. Itachi would suggest a retreat, and they would agree, leaving and moving to the far west, allowing for Kurosuchi and for Roshi to take the battle. Once she unsummoned her Zord, she realized it took a lot out of her, and unfortunately, Kurosuchi would have to demorph. Once she did so, Roshi would ask again who she was and where she had come from. Seeing from her clothing underneath her ranger outfit, he could tell that she was a fellow shinobi from the Stone Village, but still, he did not know who she was. Kurosuchi would explain that she was indeed a stone shinobi, and that what she was a Power Ranger. At least, that's what she liked to call it. Roshi had no idea who these Power Rangers were, and Kurosuchi tried her best to explain that they were kind of an order of special shinobi who fought against great evil. Of course, Roshi didn't care too much for it, and was pretty much ready to ignore her as he was walking off, However, Kurosuchi would quickly chase behind him, asking him not to leave but to come with her, as she wanted to protect him from the Akatsuki, explaining to him who they were and what they were after. Still, Roshi did not care to entertain her any longer, remarking that in the end, he was just caught off guard, nothing more, nothing less. However, Kurosuchi would rebuttal, explaining that from her point of view, if she hadn't come when she did, he most likely would have died. Roshi remarked that would not happen again, and the two of them found themselves bickering and arguing as they made their way through the land of Earth. However, Kurosuchi would use her morpher to send a message to the other Rangers, telling them that she had found the Four Tails, and hopefully she could find the Five Tails rather soon. As she continued her journey with Roshi, the two of them continuing to butt heads with one another, Kurosuchi only shook her head, the thoughts of Naruto and his safety keeping her going. Even if she didn't like it, she knew this was for the best, as her journey continued. In the meantime, back in the Hidden Leaf Village, Sasuke would be training with Naruto and Cam, the Red, Green, and Black Ninja Storm Rangers, testing their new abilities together and seeing what they were capable of. Much like Naruto and Cam, Sasuke's powers worked a lot similar to theirs. Of course, his morpher was made differently from theirs, as his was a prototype to the original 6. When Orochimaru got his hands on it, he spent much of his time trying to figure out what the morphing grid was. He was able to deduce it was a different dimension of power, and that this device was capable of siphoning that power. Though for whatever reason, he could not bond with the morpher naturally, as his body had rejected him. However, Sasuke reveals that Orochimaru's true plans was to allow Sasuke to bond with the morpher, then take his body, and in the process not only steal the Sharingan, but also steal the powers of the Black Ranger. In the end, Cam would acknowledge that the Black Ranger was never a part of the Order originally, the 6 Rangers that fought against the great evil long ago, the evil that was Madara Uchiha. But still, that didn't mean that Sasuke couldn't be a part of the team, and that he couldn't help them. The way they saw it, when fighting against any sort of evil, having all the help that you could get was more than warranted. But for Sasuke, the more he got to know of Cam and of everything that he had gone through in his life, the more he began to regret some of the decisions he had made. Of course, training with Orochimaru, he had gotten stronger, but still, when he learned of how his morpher came to be, how it was because of Orochimaru, and how he had killed Cam's parents, he apologized for joining him, and noting that he would help him in any way that he could, as he too understood the pain of losing a family, and Cam appreciated this. At the same time, Sasuke was left with more questions than answers. If Orochimaru had been on the outs with the Akatsuki, why suddenly were they taking him back? What exactly were they trying to gain from all of this? Did the Akatsuki really think that the Rangers were that much of a threat that they needed Orochimaru's help once again? And would this lead him any closer to the meeting with his brother Itachi Uchiha? These were questions that he would have to answer in due time. In the meanwhile, 2 more members of the Akatsuki, in Hidan and Kakazu, would successfully capture the Two Tails, although they would hear the report from their fellow comrades in Kisame and Itachi that they had been thwarted by the Rangers in their capture of the Four Tails, and instead they were changing their pursuits for now. As they had finished things up, Hidan and Kakazu would get their next orders to head to the Land of Fire. In the process, they would stop by the Land of Fire's Fire Temple. Arriving, Kakazu would capture and kill Chiriku, one of the former members of the Guardians 12. As for the other members, they were unfortunately slaughtered in the process, Hidan using them as a ritual for his god in the way of Jashin. However, one managed to escape and would send news back to the Hidden Leaf Village. Tsunade would immediately mobilize various teams to hunt down the Akatsuki. Among them, Asuma would lead his own team with Shikamaru, as well as with Kakashi and Sasuke, while Naruto would meet with Captain Yamato once again, having not seen him since their days spent together in the Land of Iron. Yamato was happy to see Naruto, as well as seeing Cam, surprised to see how much they had grown and improved, and he also commended them for their efforts in the sand, hearing of how successful their mission had gone. Yamato would also be leading a team of Naruto, Cam, and Sakura to help assist in the Akatsuki suppression. As they made their way out, Asuma would lead his team. As they went to the temple, they would learn more about Asuma's past, and how he too once served there as a member of the Guardians 12, and that he had a bounty even greater than his late friend Chiriku. Kakashi was able to deduce that the Akatsuki duo in all likelihood were heading to the bounty hunter station, and that they could probably catch them there. Before long, Kakashi's suspicions would be proven correct, as outside, sitting and waiting, would be Hidan, as he wasn't too much for the lust of money or anything else trivial of this world. He simply sat outside waiting, when out of nowhere, he would be stabbed from both ends, Sasuke from the left and Kakashi from the right. However, much to their shock, Hidan would not die instantly, as it seemed as though their attacks, while it did damage, had no real effect upon him. Both Kakashi and Sasuke would back away from Hidan, as he would use his three-bladed scythe to try to take both of their heads off. Both Asuma and Shikamaru would appear to back them up, but then suddenly, Kakuzu would also arrive, leading them to an all-out fight. As Sasuke turned his attentions towards Kakuzu, blocking an attack that he had towards Shikamaru, Sasuke realized he would need to use his ranger powers if he was going to outmatch Kakuzu in his strength. As he morphed into the Black Ranger, Sasuke looked to the others, letting them know that he could deal with Kakuzu as long as they took care of the other guy. This would lead to the battle splitting off into two fronts: Hidan versus Shikamaru, Asuma, and Kakashi, while Sasuke, in his ranger form, would take on Kakuzu. In terms of this battle, Hidan would simply be outclassed, mainly because both Asuma and Shikamaru were able to do more than well enough of a job to deal with Hidan on their own, but with the aid of someone like Kakashi, who was shown in the anime to be able to hold his own against Hidan just fine, backing them up with his versatile range of jutsu, Asuma, even if he were to get nicked by Hidan, they would quickly learn the secrets of his technique, the blood ritual, and in doing so, they would be able to immobilize him rather quickly. As for Sasuke, this version of Sasuke would be the same one from the original timeline, one that was shown to be more than capable of holding his own against those of the elite. This version of Sasuke alone is powerful enough to match with Kakuzu and kill him, but with the aid of the ranger powers at his disposal, increasing his strength tenfold, this means Sasuke is just utterly in a class of his own against Kakuzu. Even with Kakuzu using his multiple hearts, Sasuke would be able to deal and handle them just fine. And once Hidan is dealt with, this would allow for Kakashi and the others to back him up. In the process of their battle, word would also be sent to Naruto and his team, as they would come to back him up as well. Even if Kakuzu were able to last long enough, between Sasuke and Kakashi alone, they would be more than enough to take out all of his hearts. And once Naruto and his team joined in the battle, Kakazu would be flat out defeated and killed in the process, while Hidan, while still immortal, would be captured and taken back to the Hidden Leaf for interrogation. In the process of this event, the Akatsuki would now realize that their numbers were dwindling a lot faster than they were realizing. The powers of the Power Rangers were proving to be more than what they could have expected. As such, the reason for Orochimaru joining with them once again, as he was partnered with Deidara of all people. The two of them could not stand one another, but in the end, this was for the best and for the sake of the team. For Orochimaru, his first test to prove his loyalties, to not cross the Akatsuki once again and to aid them in their goals. Their first mission was going to be to the Hidden Mist Village for the capture of the Three Tails, the Mizukage Yagura. In the meantime, with Naruto and his team, as they returned back to the Hidden Leaf Village, Naruto would meet with Jiraiya as they hadn't seen each other in a while. While Jiraiya was there, he would have met Karin Uzumaki. As he did so, while he kept it to himself, he would note that she looked a lot like Kushina, especially with her long red hair being a dead giveaway. As the master and student would reconvene with one another, Jiraiya would commend Naruto for how far he had come, noting how proud he was of him for not only getting a hold of his new power, but also for keeping his own promise and bringing Sasuke back to the village. This only inspired Jiraiya to continue on even further, as he was going to be in the Hidden Leaf for some time before his next mission, one that Naruto would learn would take him to the Hidden Rain Village. Of course, Naruto wanted to accompany him, believing that with his newfound strength, he would be more than useful to aid Jiraiya. However, Jiraiya would tell Naruto that where he was going would potentially bring him into conflict with the leader of the Akatsuki, if his sources were correct, and the last thing he wanted was delivering Naruto into the hands of the enemy. However, overhearing their conversation, Cam would decide to take Naruto's place. Of course, Naruto was also worried for his friend, as he didn't want him to be hurt in the process either. However, Cam would assure Naruto that everything was going to be fine, and that they were both going to be able to make it back together. Jiraiya would be convinced, and would decide to take Cam along. As the two of them would set out and make their way to the Hidden Rain Village, Naruto would be left with some time in the Hidden Leaf to train and practice honing his skills, along with anything else that he felt he needed to work on. While doing so, he would also spend some time reconnecting with the rest of Team 7, Sasuke now being a part of the group once again, and all would seem well for the most part, as Jiraiya and Cam began their adventures to find the mysteries of the Hidden Rain Village. On the outskirts of the Hidden Leaf, at a place known as the Uchiha Hideout, Itachi would feel that his time was coming to an end. But now, recent developments, with Orochimaru now joining the Akatsuki once more, Itachi had to make the final preparations. As he sat on the throne, before him would be two crows. One crow he had been gifted by an old friend, and he would plan to use this well, as it would serve as the key to putting everything into motion. As for the second crow, it would fly off to Konoha, arriving there by nightfall, as it made its way to the home of Sasuke Uchiha, who was resting after a day of training with Naruto, as well as spending it with Team 7. As he laid in his bed, he would hear the flutter of the crow as it sat on a windowsill. Sasuke would immediately sit up as he was alerted to its presence. As he walked over, seeing the crow, he instantly knew where it had come from. His eyes would morph into the Sharingan as he looked down to the crow and into its eyes. The eye of the crow would also morph into the Sharingan as well. And inside of Sasuke's mind, a message would be given to him. He would be standing in the throne room with Itachi, and Itachi would give him the invitation that he had long waited for, as it was time for the two brothers to settle things once and for all. This concludes Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm Part 3. As always, if you enjoyed today's video and everything else that we have on the channel, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcasting that's to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we are going to be continuing Fire Force Lightspeed Rescue based on the Heroes of the Morphin Grid series Part 3. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.